The vice presidential candidates will square off for their first and only debate on CBS News this Tuesday night, October 1st. CBS Evening News anchor and managing editor Norah O'Donnell and Face the Nation moderator Margaret Brennan will serve as the debate moderators. The face-off between Democratic Minnesota Governor Tim Walz and Republican Senator J.D. Vance of Ohio comes as the presidential race remains so close in the seven battleground states where the race will likely be won. And here to talk about the debate and the presidential and U.S. Senate races in Texas is Kardal Coleman, chair of the Dallas County Democratic Party, and retired Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, chair of the Dallas County Republican Party. Welcome to both of you. We appreciate it. Welcome to Eye on Politics. And so we're going to start with the debate, and I want to know what each of you thinks. What are you each expecting? Kardal, we'll start with you.
Look, I expect a spirited debate. Right? I think that Tim Walz is prepared. He's prepared to lead the country. And that's no question from the voters who are going to watch this. If you watch the presidential debate, you saw leadership on the stage. And I think you'll see more of that shining from the administration or a hopeful administration of Harris-Walz.
Alan.
Well, I tell you, I am much more relieved that it's not Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, as the vice presidential nominee. But glaringly, what we will see is that here you have an enlisted Marine who did answer the call of service for his country and went to Iraq. And you have another enlisted soldier, I hate to say this, that did not answer that call and for whatever reason abandoned his unit. And so that is something that will be very glaring. But also I think that Governor Walz is going to have to answer about his time as governor with the economic situation in Minnesota, where you have the highest corporate income tax rate in the country, 9.8% for a state, and you have the sixth highest personal income tax rate for a state in the United States of America. So I think that there will be some glaring differences.
Do you expect the differences in service? I mean, Governor Walz did serve 24 years in the Minnesota Guard. So do you expect that to be an issue?
Yeah, because, you know, you can serve, but when you get that call to go and leave your family and go to maybe make that last full measure of devotion, to not do that, that is something that we in the military take, you know, as a very stickling point. And the reason that he gave was that, you know, he had to step down so that he could run for office. As a National Guardsman, a reserve component member, he did not have to step down to do that. He could have gone and deployed and still been able to run for office.
Kardal, what do you make of that argument?
Also, Army veteran myself, I full well understand this. Think that, you know, people who step up to serve in our country should be commended as such. And so, you know, when we see this debate, it'll be a debate about perspective, right? A debate about how do you serve, and not everyone who serves in the military, that's not the full stop of how we serve our country, for those who serve in public office or elected office. So I think all of that will come to bear in this debate.
And talk to me before you called it spirited. Isn't this going to be pretty combative because they're going to attack the other presidential candidate, right? Isn't this going to be not just attacking each other, but attacking the person at the top of the ticket? Well,
look, President Biden just a few months ago asked that we lower the temperature with the political rhetoric. And I think that that's happened on both sides. And so I think that happened even in the presidential debate. And so I don't know that we'll see a lot of attacks. We have two individuals who know how to get their point across in an articulate way, both candidates. And so I think we'll see that. And the hope for the American people is that we won't see so many attacks. I think the American people are over the fighting, infighting, and then fighting in the public square. And so we have to get back to solutions and get over the rhetoric.
And I think that's an important job of the moderators. The moderators should make sure that we're focusing on those top issues for the American people. Without a doubt, it's the economy. It's without a doubt our energy security, our national security, foreign policy, our domestic security. Here we are in the Dallas, Texas area, and we come to find out that we have this Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua, that is operating here. I think that's a big concern, and we see what's going on in the south side of Chicago, where now you have a gang turf war. But I think that those are the things that the moderators should be focusing on and making sure that people answer the questions instead of, you know, maybe trying to sideswipe each other and not answer the questions, because that's what the American people want to know.
So what does your candidate need to do to win this debate?
I think on our side with J.D. Vance, he has to defend those policies. He has to talk about the economic policies. He has to talk about that record. He has to talk about that seminal question that Ronald Reagan asked, you know, so many years ago: are you better off than you were 4 years ago? and get to the heart of that. Let's talk about the chaos and confusion that we see all across the globe. I was not really happy to see a United States Air Force C-17 bringing over the president of Ukraine and really taking a kind of a political stance. Let's talk about how we got into these situations around the globe. And let's talk about how we can restore our energy independence, which I think is very important for us here in Texas.
And my last question on this debate, and that is, as you know, the race is so close. I mean, if you look at the battleground states right now, it's 2 percentage points and less than that in the states, in these 7 battleground states. And so I'm wondering, how crucial is this debate in this overall fight? Because there are only 5 weeks left till Election Day, just about.
I think it's very crucial. You know, it will model what way this country decides to go. Right? What level of temperament, what type of leadership do we really want to see our country have for the next 4 years? And so we asked, what is it that we need to see from Tim Walz? We need to see who he's always been, right? See who he's been to the people of Minnesota. If that's as personable as Coach Walz, something that we can all resonate with, or a governor who has made sure that every child had a meal to eat and no one went hungry in this state. Those are the things, those kitchen table conversations and ability to connect with everyday people that we want to see, that the American people deserve to see.
And I think that one of the things about Tim Walz, you know, if you look at some of the polling, Kamala Harris has lost about 5 to 6 percentage points in Minnesota since he was named as her vice presidential nominee. So I think it is important for him to show that he can be a good wingman, just the same as with J.D. Vance, that he can show that he'll be a good wingman for President Trump.
So let's move on and talk about the U.S. Senate race here in Texas. And there's a new development that just came out, and that is the Democratic Senatorial Campaign Committee is now going to be injecting millions of dollars into Colin Allred's bid to unseat Senator Ted Cruz. And so, Alan, I want to start with you on this. How big of a deal is this, and how concerned does this make you?
Well, it's a huge deal. I mean, we saw a little bit of this when former Congressman O'Rourke ran, but I think there's a little bit of difference between how former Congressman O'Rourke approached this race than what I see with Colin Allred. You know, O'Rourke was everywhere. There are 254 counties in the state of Texas, and I believe that he just about hit every single one. I don't think we see that so much from Colin Allred, a lot of advertisements and things of this nature. So I think that they really want to make the point that Texas is in play. I don't know if that's going to be possible because, again, it's about the East Texas and West Texas, the shoulders that prop it up. But when you look at our major urban population centers, I think that's where they're hoping to get the most play out of Representative Allred, potentially winning that Senate seat.
Kardal.
Listen, I have a chance to talk to my colleagues around the state, other county chairs, even in rural spaces, right? And so I think the Allred campaign is making its way around to those places, but also Texas is just a huge land block. And so to be able to communicate with everybody, you have to use the power of the airways. You have to mail some of those traditional campaigning points. And so to be able to get that message across, you know, it is a large state to be able to travel.
And so this, you know, people always ask me about this race, and, you know, this is different. 2024 is obviously very different than 2018. And so I'm wondering, in 2018, we saw, you know, O'Rourke came very close, you know, less than 3 percentage points. Do you think it's going to be that close again in this year, which is, you know, not a very great year for Democrats as 2018 was?
There's ability for it to be close and for the gap to absolutely close. We saw Congresswoman Liz Cheney touring Texas with Colin Allred, something that the likes that we've never seen before, a bipartisan tour during an election, and a member of Congress from another state who, from the other side of the aisle, endorsing Colin Allred.
Yeah, okay.
Colin Allred.
Yeah.
I was going to say senator. Don't want to be presumptuous there. Colin Allred. So making sure that we talk to every voter, not just the ones on the Democratic side of the aisle, but making sure we're talking to those who are questioning, does this party still share my values? Do I have a place here? And making sure that everyone feels welcomed.
How big of a deal was that endorsement, do you think? And is that going to make a difference?
You know, it's funny because I was just out in Wyoming last week in Sheridan, Wyoming, and I don't think it's going to make that big of a difference. If anything, it's a head scratcher when Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney are out there, because once upon a time, the Democrat Party referred to Dick Cheney as Darth Vader. So if it's more about personality than policy, I think that's a big question. But you know, when I look at what is going to be happening, we got a debate coming up between Mr. Allred, Congressman Allred, and Senator Cruz. I think that that's going to be a very big deciding factor because, again, let's get these two individuals together and let's have the debate on policy and let's have the debate on what policies are best for the state of Texas and the United States of America.
And what issues, you know, do you think, I mean, again, I would imagine the economy, what's the answer for inflation, border security, but abortion is also an issue in Texas.
Absolutely.
So what do you make of that, and how are they going to each try to win that? Because the race is down to about 5 percentage points with Cruz leading.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about a woman's right to choose. It's not just as cut and dry as the conversation around abortion. We have to talk about IVF and the ability to family plan for individuals who want that. Then also we have to talk about Texas and where it stands as far as maternal mortality compared to the rest of the country. So I think Colin Allred does a masterful job in being able to communicate with individuals. He has a young family himself, and so being able to communicate with individuals who are have young families or working on family planning, I think that's where he shines the most.
You know, I'm very pleased with what I see here in Texas as far as this. I just had a grandson who is now 11 months old that was born at 29 weeks. My daughter, who is a neonatologist, she suffered from gestational hypertension. I think that that's what we should be focusing on. Cures for ovarian cancers, cervical cancers, uterine cancers, breast cancers, those gestacular issues that affected my daughter. And to see a 3-pound, 2-ounce-old baby now to be 22 pounds in less than a year, I think that we do have some things that we can applaud with what's happening with our children and raising up our children in some very tough healthcare situations here in the state of Texas.
Why do you think this race has become so competitive? Because everybody always says, well, Texas is a red state. So what's going on here on the ground? How motivated are Republicans?
Well, I mean, again, you look at the spine of I-35 from Denton all the way down to San Antonio. You look at Houston-Harris County. You look at El Paso County. Democrats have done very well in the major urban population centers. I just got back in, as you know, from my hometown of birth, Atlanta, Georgia, and you see the same thing in Georgia, a red state, 159 counties, but yet 5 or 6 counties are, you know, very much so in the blue column, and that has a big effect on what you saw. And now you have Senators Warnock and Ossoff. So I think that that playbook is exactly what the Democrat Party would like to see here in Texas, controlling some of these major urban population centers, going out and get X amount of percentage of vote in rural areas and be able to flip a state like Texas.
Kardal, let me ask you a different question. How big of an impact has the fact that Vice President Kamala Harris is the nominee now, top of the ticket? What impact has that had on the race here in Texas?
It's made the world of difference. You know,
How?
Week to week, we see hundreds, both Wednesdays, Sundays, Thursdays, hundreds of volunteers coming to volunteer at our county headquarters and at our satellite offices, whether that's phone banks for Kamala, calls for Kamala, which we call it, block walking, letter writing. So we've had a groundswell of volunteers and people who are energized, those who've not been with us in a while, right? Those who have not really participated since 2008, and then a bunch of new faces. So I think it's made the world a difference in fundraising ability and volunteer recruitment as well.
So let's talk about the presidential race. Why is it that we are seeing Trump have a bigger lead over Harris in Texas than Cruz has over Allred? What's that about?
Well, I think without a doubt there's a little bit of down ballot problems, and we saw that back some time ago when Senator Ted Cruz ran previously, that he underperformed from a national level. And I think that comes back to him having to get out and do a little bit better in presenting himself. There are some things about Senator Cruz can rub people the wrong way. There's no doubt about that. But I believe that in the end, those coattails that President Trump has will help him here. I don't think it'll be a 2.3% margin, but it will definitely be somewhere less than 6% with Senator Ted Cruz in this race.
What do you say?
Congressman Allred has crossover appeal, and I think that's what's making a difference. Going back to my comment about Congresswoman Cheney being in Texas, there are a number of people who I've encountered who are Republican who say, I plan to vote for Colin Allred. Right? And so I think that's the difference. He has crossover appeal. He lives at the point of many intersections, being a former voting rights attorney, NFL player, and then also being a young man from Dallas who has a young family. I think that really resonates with a lot of people here.
I want to go further down ballot because there are some state races that we are watching very closely, and that is 2 House seats that Republicans still have, and that is Morgan Meyer in House District 108 and Angie Chen Button in House District 112. Where do you see those races going? Kardal, we'll start with you.
Look, Avery Bishop is extremely popular in 112.
And she's running against Angie Chen Button.
She's running against Angie Chen Button. Her ability to connect with people is something that I've not really seen before, whether that's on social media where she has over 1 million followers or just being able to genuinely connect in person. So these are the points I think people are ready for elected officials and politicians that give us a sense of normalcy, right? Enough of the confusion and the chaos, getting back to a sense of normalcy and someone that we can genuinely connect with. Same thing with Elizabeth Ginsburg in House District 108, the nominee there. She is a person who everyone loves to connect with. And so I think that's the difference that you see with people getting out to support these individuals.
Alan.
I think that Morgan Meyer and Angie Chen Button will be successful and be able to pull things out. And one of the reasons is you've seen an incredible shift in the Texas State House. You know about the 12 to 13 races where incumbents in our primary lost. And I believe that, these incumbents now have seen that, we've got to stand up for the right things that are aligned with these Texas values. Our border security is very important. The fact that we had legislation in the Texas State House in the last session that would have precluded a country like China, our #1 geopolitical foe, from coming in and buying up land, that failed in the Texas State House. I think that many of the members on the Republican side got that message that we need to protect Texas. And so we will make sure that those people are returned back into those seats to do exactly that.
Do you think that it helps that the Republicans were given a little bit more room as far as their districts are concerned? I mean, all the incumbents really were, Democrats too.
Yeah, sure. I think it does help, but I also will say be on the lookout for maybe some surprises, some upsets, because, John June, who is running in an open seat, and he is a Korean Army veteran, Navy veteran, I'm sorry, and then also Stephen Stanley, who's running against Retta Bowers. You could see some upsets there as well.
Kardal.
Well, look, we've been working all year long. It didn't just start this summer. It didn't start with the announcement of Kamala Harris. We've been knocking doors, talking to voters, talking to our neighbors. And our candidates are working very hard to make sure that they're meeting people right where they are, speaking in their languages. And so I think you'll see the results of that come November.
All right. Well, Alan West, Kardal Coleman, thank you both so much. We really appreciate you stopping by on Politics.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you very much for watching at home.